Hey guys, welcome to a video I wanted to make showing off what the game looks like at the very end with all characters fully leveled in the Persona 3 New Moon mod. This is not vanilla Persona 3. I've actually never played vanilla Persona 3 past the first couple in-game days technically because I wanted to play with this mod instead, which rebalances the game to try and make it more fair since Persona 3 infamously has a lot of fights that are way too easy and a lot of fights that are way too hard, and so this mod is made to try and balance things out. Overall, I think it does a pretty good job. If anything, it might go a little bit too hard on the easy side, because it gives a lot of really strong buffs to a lot of the party members in the game, that at least, I'm not talking from experience there, I guess, but mostly just from reading wikis on what they used to be like before this mod. But it does seem like they made a lot of party members that used to be underpowered a lot stronger in this mod. And I do think that's really good. I just think they should probably buff the bosses in this game a little bit more to compensate for that. Although, to come clean, I am also using another very popular mod for Persona 3, the Party Control mod, to allow you to actually command what your teammates do rather than have them act automatically without your control for the most part. As a side note, that does also have one bug with it, if you weren't aware. I sure wasn't, because I've been playing on this mod for months, and I've only just found out that it breaks Invigorate and Regenerate, the passives that give you HP or SP back at the end of every turn for free. Those moves don't work with the Party Control mod, unfortunately. I noticed that they weren't working, but I thought I was doing something wrong. No, it's a problem with the mod. All that being said, obviously this video is going to have some spoilers. I'm not going to talk about story in this video, don't worry, but inevitably I'm literally on the last day of the game right now, and I'm going to be looking at everyone's personas. There's going to be some lighter spoilers just from that are completely unavoidable. But as long as you're happy with that going into this video, then we can, I guess, start off with Yukari. I guess Yukari would be considered the first one to join you, even though Yukari and Junpei kind of join at the same time. So let's take a look at a persona. Yukari starts off with Io, of course, but it later evolves into Isis. Isis is of the Lover's Arcana, and as you can see, I've got her at level 99. She's weak to lightning, but she nullifies wind, and she's resistant to dark attacks. She has a magic stat of 94, so she can deal a hell of a lot of healing and a hell of a lot of wind-based damage. But as you can see, a lot of her other stats are a lot lower. She has pretty average endurance, even at full level, 58. She has very low strength, but obviously she's not made for physical damage, only 50 strength. Her agility is 65, a little bit higher than the others you might notice. Specifically, that was done to try and make it so she misses less often, because the creator of the mod did notice that Yukari's tendency to miss so often was making her a little bit weak. And just about every persona seems to have a pretty average luck stat. I don't think anyone has a particularly high or low luck stat for whatever reason. It's always basically the same, so yeah. But anyway, let's take a look at her moveset. And straight away we get into the interesting stuff, because every single character in the game, except one, we'll get to them soon, actually got a brand new move in this mod that is exclusive to the mod. Now, in fairness, when I say a brand new move, most of these new moves are either simply tweaking the numbers of an already existing move, or they are combining together already existing moves. Twilight is an example of the second option. Twilight combines Stagnant Air with Maracunda. So to put that into English, Stagnant Air is an ability that can increase the chances that an enemy will be afflicted by an ailment. Ailments is stuff like being charmed, being panicked, being inflicted with fear or despair, stuff like that. And basically every move in the game that can inflict that kind of stuff only does it based off a percentage chance. It's never guaranteed. And so Stagnant Air can be used to make all enemies more likely to be affected by things like that. But it's usually not worth wasting a whole turn on using Stagnant Air just for a higher chance, but still not a guarantee, of getting an ailment on an enemy. As a result, Twilight fixes this by bundling it with Maracunda, a far more effective move which reduces the defense of all enemies so you can do more damage to them. So yeah, this is quite a cool move for Yukari to have, and I think it massively helps her out, because I think the biggest problem with Yukari in the original game is that she has literally no buffs or debuffs. And if you're pretty new to Persona games or SMT games, things like attack buffs, defense buffs, and evasion buffs, and the same goes for debuffs, of course, on enemies, those kind of moves are inarguably the single most important moves in the game. They are insanely valuable, and you should be using them basically all the time in every single, serious battle that you get into in these games. All that being said, he has Amrita, which obviously cures all ailments on all teammates, so they can't be, you know, inflicted with fear or poison or whatever. Diorahan to full heal an ally of your choice. Garudine, third tier wind attack. Most of these attacks, if you're unfamiliar, these elemental-based attacks usually have 3 tiers, so for wind it's Garu, Garula, and Garudine. There is an attack even stronger than Garudine, which is called Phanta Ray, or I don't know if it's pronounced like that, PH Phanta Ray, which deals even more wind damage than Garudine. However, Yukari does not learn that move, and only one persona in the entire game, I believe, is capable of learning that move, the ultimate persona of the Fortune Arcana, Norn. So you can only get that on your main protagonist. You can get Phanta Ray onto other personas through fusion once you got it on Norn, but yeah, that's only for the main character. You have Windbreak to set a enemy's resistance to wind to neutral for 3 turns, which might sound like a waste, but if you go up against an enemy that completely absorbs or repels wind, so you can't even damage them at all with Yukari, well, Yukari's pretty useless with physical, so you might actually find yourself using that a little bit, just because having to spend a whole turn just to make an enemy capable of being hurt by wind is better than spending 3 turns spamming arrow shots which barely do any damage when you could be doing high wind damage. Garudine deals basically just Garudine, but it hits all enemies, and it costs more to use. Samaricom brings someone back from the dead with full health, and Media Rahan full heals the entire team. So, that's Yukari. Also, hopefully I can walk okay, yeah. I'm doing this one-handed, because I got one hand holding up the mic and one hand trying to use the controller. Anyway, Junpei is of course the other person to join your team at the start. And I believe he is the only character in this mod who did not receive a brand new move. I must admit, I thought Spring of Life was a brand new move when I first saw it, since it clearly stands out, and I got it when his persona evolved from Hermes to Trismegistus, and a lot of the new moves are gotten that way. However, I didn't realise that this is actually in the original game. It's just that, again, I hadn't played the original past the first few days. I played with the mod straight away. Anyway, Spring of Life is a passive, which makes it so that you heal 8% of your health every turn. It's essentially Regenerate 4 if Regenerate 4 existed, and only Junpei can get it. There's nowhere else in the game, I believe, that you can get this passive, which is pretty cool. However, unfortunately, as I mentioned, the party control mod makes this not work, since it messes up something to do with what's considered the start of turn. It's a bit weird. You can see he's also got Matarunda. In the original game, Junpei has Rakukaja, which later changes into Marakukaja. But here they took Tarunda away from Akihiko to give it to Junpei. And that's really good, because not only is Tarunda better than Rakukaja usually, because of the fact that Rakukaja only protects one teammate unless it's Marakukaja, whereas Tarunda can protect all teammates from one enemy, and usually you're only concerned about one big enemy in situations like that. But also, it makes him more useful to be run with Aigis, because Aigis, of course, already has Marakukaja, and is another physical-heavy team member, so it wouldn't be all that out there that you might want to run Junpei and Aigis together. And if you wanted to do that in the past, then they would both have Marakukaja, and it would kind of be redundant. So it's nice that that's no longer an issue now. Either way, it doesn't really matter that much once it gets to Matarunda, because obviously Matarunda and Marakukaja are kind of the same thing. But still, I think it's a nice upgrade that makes Junpei feel a lot more helpful. Gigantic Fist, I believe, is the most damaging bash-type move in the game, so it's a pretty good physical move. And it has a relatively good crit rate. High Counter is a passive, which in Persona 4, High Counter is practically useless, but in Persona 3, High Counter is far more effective. You see, if you hadn't already noticed, in Persona 3, if you've only played the other Persona games, there's actually 3 kinds of physical. In Persona 4, there was only physical, and in Persona 5, there's physical and gun. But in Persona 3, there's Slash, Bash, and Pierce. I know that the second one is actually called Strike, but I want to call it Bash because it rhymes with Slash, and I memorized it that way, and shut up. Anyway, so yeah, High Counter is more effective in Persona 3 for 2 reasons. For one, the reason that High Counter is so garbage in Persona 4 is because it was nerfed from Persona 3. High Counter in Persona 4 is only a 20% chance as a passive ability to reflect a physical attack back at the person who tried to hit you. Whereas in Persona 3, it's a 50% chance. A huge buff in comparison. But not only that, it also has something else helping it out. That being that because there are 3 types of physical in Persona 3, it's really hard to get physical resistance in Persona 3. You might find a Persona that's immune to slash, but it'll still be vulnerable to pierce or bash attacks, and there's not much you can do about that. I mean, you can still eventually, in the late game, get a Persona which maybe has repel slash, repel bash, and repel pierce. It's possible to get all 3 of those at once, but of course that's 3 whole skill slots you're taking up. It's quite a lot to go through. Meanwhile, you could just get high counter instead, and while it is still based on chance, it's a pretty high chance that any of those 3 types of physical moves will be reflected. So it's really, really nice to have. Anyway, enough about high counter. Junpei also has Agidyne, the tier 3 single target fire attack. However, he doesn't do all that much damage with it, since you can see that his magic stat is very, very low, at only 46. Thankfully, that's obviously compensated by his very high strength stat and his decent endurance. Brave Blade is one of the most damaging slash attacks in the game. I think out of the single target ones, I think it's the highest damage single target slash attack. And it has a very high critical rate of 20% at base, which might not sound that high, but when you actually look at the numbers, there are a lot of physical moves in the Persona games that only have like 1 or 2% crit chances, so a 20% crit chance at base is actually pretty good. He has Power Charge, of course, which spends a turn to make your next physical move deal 2.5 times the normal amount of damage, which is very good to combo with attack buffs from Tarukaja. And Vorpal Blade, which I believe is the strongest multi-target slash-based attack in the game, and I don't remember its crit rate, I think it's 10%. Either way, it's also a relatively good crit rate. So yeah, unfortunately I can't actually read the descriptions of the abilities without getting into a battle, because Persona 3 is stupid like that. Anyway. Now, Akihiko was next, if I remember correctly. And Akihiko is going to be a bit of an interesting one, because, of course, even as someone who has only watched and not played the complete original game without playing this mod, I am still very much aware that Akihiko is by far the most broken teammate in the game in the original. And that mostly comes down to the fact that he's really good with magical-based damage, really good with physical-based damage as well, is also capable of strong single-target healing, just not multi-target healing, and on top of all that, he runs a monopoly on all the debuffs in the game. And I did mention how important it is to use buffs and debuffs to be effective in this game. In the original game, he has Tarunda, Rakunda, and Sukunda all in one character, and no one else on the team learns any of those 3 moves, which is a huge downside to the rest of the team. Now, of course, this mod tries to balance that out a bit. I already mentioned that Akihiko loses Tarunda to give it to Junpei, and in its place he gets Deikunda to be able to remove any Unda effects that the enemy uses on you. If you had a sharper eye as well, you might also have noticed his stat distribution has changed. In the original game, his strength and magic stat are both higher than this. However, his endurance isn't as high as this. They took away some of the points in his strength and magic to put it into his endurance because of the fact that they realized that thanks to having such a high strength and magic stat, Akihiko could simultaneously be a physical bruiser while also being high on magic damage, which kind of isn't fair. Now, it's not like he's got garbage damage or anything, it's still not terrible stats, but obviously it's a lot more spread out and he's more of kind of an all-rounder rather than just specializing in everything. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention yet, Akihiko starts with Polydeuces, but of course it evolves into Caesar of the Emperor Arcana. He's resistant to bash attacks, weak to ice, and completely nullifies electricity. I already said what Deikunda does, so let's go to Fistmaster. This is a passive ability that makes you deal bonus damage when using punch attacks, which of course is the kind of weapon that Akihiko uses. He uses just his fists. Oh yeah, I kind of skipped over that. Most of you already know, but Yukari uses a bow and arrow, and Junpei uses two-handed swords. Anyway, you might notice that Akihiko, despite being, a boxer, actually doesn't have any physical attacks in this final lineup. I always found this a bit weird. Apparently, the Fistmaster passive replaces Sonic Punch, his only physical attack. I was kind of surprised he doesn't get more physical attacks late into the game, but okay, sure. He has Zeodyne, a tier 3 electric-based attack or lightning. He has Debilitate, an ability which combines Tarunda, Rakunda, and Sukunda all into one move. However, there is no multi-target version of Debilitate, it's only single target, and it is of course quite expensive as well. He has Diarahan to be able to set one person to full health, but he doesn't have any way of healing multiple people. And he has Gemini. This is his brand new move in this mod, and it is quite the effective debuff. It essentially packages together Maracunda and Masakunda into one move, both reducing the defense rate and the chances of enemies dodging your attacks, while making them miss attacks more often too. Maziodyne, of course, just the multi-target version of Ziodyne. And finally, Elekkamp, a passive which increases the damage of all electrical-based attacks by 50%. Next is Mitsuru, who uses one-handed swords. She starts out with a persona Penthesilea, but later in the game it evolves into Artemisia. Artemisia is weak to fire, but nullifies ice and is resistant to light. She obviously, as you can see, has one very high stat, and that is her magic at 91. With the rest of her stats generally being pretty even, the only one else that kind of pokes out is agility at 64. This is obviously a persona of the Empress Arcana, and let's go through their moveset. We start off with Mind Charge, which is kind of a staple of any magic user in the Persona series, because Mind Charge will make your next move, when you spend a whole turn using it, that is magic-based, deal 2.5 times damage. It's just the magic version of Power Charge. Acquiesce is Mitsuru's brand new move in this mod, and I think it's quite interesting, although I'm not sure how useful it really is. I only use it every now and then, but I definitely think it's fun. Acquiesce replaces Spirit Drain. Spirit Drain is an ability in the vanilla game which is used to steal 30 SP from an enemy at the cost of only 3 SP. This can make them run out of SP so they can't use magic-based attacks if you can do it enough to them, or it can simply be used to just regenerate your own SP when you're out of SP in a pinch. Acquiesce takes this and upgrades it quite a bit. It not only allows you to steal more SP than Spirit Drain does, but on top of that it also steals health, and a decent amount of it too. However, the catch is that because you're stealing health, not dealing damage, it has a lot of weird properties to it. It's considered a form of almighty damage, which is why the icon is like that for that ability. So there's no kind of resistances that can prevent the amount of damage this would do, which obviously makes it more useful and allows you to steal more health. However, this goes both ways. Unfortunately, you also can't increase the amount of health that you would get from someone by increasing your attack or decreasing their defense, and I'm kind of disappointed to say that you cannot Mind Charge this move. I was hoping that Mind Charge would work on this move, but it doesn't. So essentially, this is mostly a move you use either to regenerate SP, finish off an enemy that's really low health, but is completely resistant to ice and slash attacks, the only kind of attacks that Mitsuru has, or generally just used in a situation where Mitsuru is the only hurt teammate, and it's just better, rather than using a whole turn just to heal yourself, to use Acquiesce so that you can heal yourself whilst taking some health from an enemy and gaining some SP in the process. So as I say, it's a pretty cool move, and it feels a little bit different to any other move in the series, but at the same time, I do think it might need a bit of a buff, because I don't use it very much. But it's certainly fun to use. Mitsuru does also have Diarahan to full heal one person, but once again, no multi-target healing. She has Ice Break to completely negate someone's ice resistance. She has Intoxicate, which has a 60% chance of making all enemies panic so that they cannot use magic-based attacks. You might not recognize this move either. I believe this one's new in the mod as well. It's essentially an upgraded version of Tentarafu. Tentarafu is an earlier version of this move, which makes it a 40% chance of making everyone panic. So Intoxicate just takes that and bumps it up to 60. We then see the move OXOBD. Okay, no, let me be serious for a second. That's obviously a bug. You see, but for some insane reason, in the original Persona 3, you see that like icon with the little moon and the star on Mind Charge? That is the icon for every single skill in the entire fucking game in the unmodded version of the game, which I hate. And I'm using a mod to make it so there's actually the correct icons for the correct moves. However, that mod, I have to install a different version of it for it to be compatible with New Moon mod, and it looks like it isn't quite up to date. As a result, there are one or two moves where the name has been corrupted, and it just looks like that. But luckily I know what all those moves are, just by using them, because they do still work, it's just a visual glitch. That glitched move there is Niflheim. Niflheim is the most high damage ice attack in the game, but it's only single target. Essentially, it's even higher damage than Bufudyne, which would usually be the highest ice damage attack in the game that most people can learn. And Niflheim is exclusive to Mitsuru and a single persona on the main character that they can get called Skadi of the Empress Arcana. Below that, you have Mabufudyne, of course, and you have Ice Amp to increase the damageable ice-based attacks by 50%. Now, if I remember correctly, I think Aigis comes after that. And Aigis starts out with the persona Palladian of the Chariot Arcana, but it later evolves into Athena. Now, Aigis nullifies Pierce, is weak to electricity, and is resistant to wind. And as you can see, her stats are basically all in on endurance to reduce the amount of damage she takes. These are the moves that she's got. She's got Daycarja to be able to remove any buffs that the enemies put on themselves. Heat Riser, the buff kind of counterpart to Debilitate, which combines Terukarja, Rakukarja, and Sukukarja together into one move. High Counter, which grants, as I already mentioned, grants a 50% chance of reflecting any kind of physical move directed at Aigis. Diarahan to full heal someone. Goddess Shield is her brand new move in this mod, and it combines together Matarukarja and Marakukarja to provide both an attack and defense boost in the same turn. She has Sama Recalm to bring someone back from the dead with full health. She has Akasha Arts, which I believe is the highest damage multi-target bash attack in the game. And God's Hand, I already mentioned, is the highest damage single-target bash attack in the game, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, she's all in on physical, she has no magic. There was a brief period I didn't play during this, but apparently in the update before the current one for this mod, they did try giving Aigis wind-based spells as like a backup, but they found that it was too overpowered, and so they put her back to being an all-physical character. So yeah. We've then got Koromaru, who I never actually realized this until I played the game, but I'm kind of disappointed. I understand why, but Koromaru is the only character in the game whose persona never evolves. It always stays as Cerberus. And I guess I understand that, you know, it's supposed to happen at important moments in the story, and Koromaru never really gets that change of heart moment. He's always the best of boys, you know, it doesn't really change. But, I suppose, I just think it would have been nice if he got some, something, but oh well. Koromaru nullifies fire, is weak to light, and nullifies darkness. And as you can see, his stats are pretty average. The main thing that stands out is that he's got a very high agility stat at 82, so he dodges very often, and he very rarely misses. He has access to Mamadoon, a darkness-based attack which hits all enemies, and if you're not familiar with the Persona series, darkness-based attacks don't actually deal damage, they instead have a percentage chance to insta-kill. So Mamadoon is a 50% chance to insta-kill every single enemy on the screen, like per enemy. So, you know, it's not like 50-50 everyone dies or no one dies, it's rather like if there's 4 enemies, on average 2 of them will die and 2 of them will live. Although I believe that's affected by your luck stat. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Desecrate is, I think it was a brand new move in this mod, and essentially is a single target darkness attack, but it has even higher chances of working at 70%. It used to be 80%, but it had to get nerfed down because 80% was too good apparently. We then have Koromaru's new move in this mod, Fleetfoot, and I actually really like this one. Fleetfoot will essentially mostly act as a Masukukarja, so it will give everyone a higher chance to dodge enemy attacks and a higher chance of not missing their attacks. However, it does do one thing on top of that, and that is it will also pick up every single teammate that's been knocked down either by a critical hit or by being hit by their elemental weakness. And this is actually really good. You see, if you're too used to Persona 4 and Persona 5, you might not realize this, but in Persona 3, when you get knocked down, it doesn't just mean that the enemy gets an extra turn, it doesn't just mean that you can't dodge the next attack that will hit you before you stand up, and it doesn't just mean that you take more damage while you're knocked down. It also means that when it comes back round to your turn, you will have to spend a full turn just to stand up without being able to use that character, which is awful. Obviously, in Persona 4 and 5, this was changed so that instead people stand up instantly and then still get to have a move. But yeah, not so in Persona 3. So yeah, you got to be really careful about that. And so even though it doesn't activate very often, of course it is extremely helpful when it does come in clutch for Koromaru to pick up the entire team with one move without having to wait for everyone to stand up and give the enemy just another free turn to finish them off, which is really, really nice. He's got Fire Break to reduce the fire resistance of an enemy to neutral. The move after that, I believe, is Heaven's Blade. It's a pretty high damage slash attack, but not quite as high as some of the other ones we've seen, like Brave Blade. But it's the highest percentage crit rate in the game at 25% at base. So it's very, very good for fishing for critical hits. The move after that is Ragnarok, which is kind of like the fire version of Niflheim. It does even more damage than Agidyne does, but only to a single target. And then we have Maragidyne and Fire Amp. And I'm pretty sure you know what those do by now. So yeah. And that just leaves one more we haven't talked about. Ken. And Ken, of course, starts with the persona of the Justice Arcana Nemesis, but it later transforms into Kala Nemi. He's resistant to electricity, he nullifies light, and he's weak to darkness. Kala Nemi generally has pretty balanced stats, but you can see he's mostly got agility for dodging attacks and landing hits, and magic for dealing increased magic-based damage, and also to increase healing output. Ken has access to Sanctify, a light-based attack, which is essentially the light counterpart of Desecrate. Sanctify is a 70% chance to insta-kill a single target. I'm pretty sure he also had Mahamon earlier in the game, but he loses it. I actually don't remember which one of these moves replaced it, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah. But in fairness, by the time it gets replaced, usually you don't end up needing it that often. He has Zeodyne, a tier 3, lightning-based attack. He has Spearmaster to increase his damage dealt with spears, his signature kind of weapon. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting to do the weapon types. Aigis uses guns, and Koromaru uses daggers. Ken also has Diarahan to full heal one target. He has Resolve, and I really like this move. This might actually be my favourite move in the Persona series, and it's not even an actual move in any of the real games, it's a move made by a mod. Resolve is Ken's brand new move in this mod, and it's quite simple, but I love it nonetheless. It's essentially a Mataru Kaja, but with an extra free bonus. That being that it doesn't just increase the attack of all your allies, it also massively improves their critical hit chances. And I love this. Because technically there is already a move in the game that can increase your critical hit chances called Revolution. But for one, it applies it to the enemies as well, not just your team. And for two, Revolution is really awkward to get to work in normal Persona. Not only are you spending a whole move just for an increased chance to land a crit, and then you still might not land a crit, so it kind of can feel like a waste sometimes. But on top of that, Revolution is kind of learned in the mid-game for the most part, and a lot of late-game Personas don't learn it. And while it's possible to give Revolution to a late-game Persona, it's a lot of hoops to jump through. As a result, a lot of people just don't bother trying to use Revolution late-game. And I think that's a shame, because I do think criticals in this game are actually really, really powerful. Because of the fact that, well, when you land a critical, you're not just dealing more damage, you're also knocking the enemy down and getting an extra free turn, and in Persona 3 specifically, denying them their next turn if you don't choose to do an all-out attack, which is quite insanely powerful, of course. So, I actually think that Revolution is somewhat underrated. It's just that it's so awkward trying to get it to work, and then you might still just get unlucky and not have it do anything, and that makes it so that it's not really very appealing. But by combining Revolution together with Mataru Kaja, a move that is one of the most important moves in the entire game, and on top of that, having it not buff the enemy's crit rate like it does normally, means that Resolve is actually an extremely effective move, because it's not only used to increase your damage, but also gives you extra turns. Seriously, I've been building around this move in my playthrough of this game, and mostly going for physical attacks that have a high chance of landing critical hits. And I've got to say, I have had a lot of success with it. With this buff, it feels like some of these physical attacks have a 3 in 4 chance of landing a critical. And when you think of that as every single attack now grants you an extra 3/4 of a turn, you can see how that's insanely powerful. So yeah, I absolutely love this new move. I was thinking of trying to hide it because I do plan on doing a ranking video of what I thought all the party members in this game, in this mod, were like, and this obviously kind of gives away the game a bit, but I couldn't hold it in. I love this move so goddamn much, and I'm so glad that I got to play with it instead of having to play in the original, where it seems like Ken is a very unpopular pick compared to Yukari as the main healer. Anyway, Ken also has Primal Force, the strongest pierce-based attack in the entire game, single target, relatively high crit rate. In fairness, Primal Force is nowhere near as strong as it is in Persona 4, unfortunately. In Persona 4, Primal Force has a base power level of 2,400 with a crit rate of 25%, which is insane. Unfortunately, in Persona 3, it only has a base power of 800, which, don't get me wrong, is still very high. 2,400 is stupid in Persona 4, but it's obviously not as high. And if I remember right, the crit rate is 10%, so it's kind of, if anything, a little bit low for late game physical attacks, although it is a lot higher than most of the physical attacks in the game. He has access to Sama Recon to bring someone back from the dead with full health, of course, and of course, being one of the main healers, Media Rahan as well, to full heal the entire team. I tried to get myself set up, even though this is my first playthrough, I still tried to get myself decked out with the best possible personas I could have for the end. Unfortunately, I did not manage to max out all social links. I really tried. I'm so fucking mad I didn't get to max out Fuka. I got 3 spend times in a row right at the end, and I literally talked to her on the last day and got another fucking spend time. Anyway, so you can see the progress that I got. I also didn't start Yukari or Aigis' social links. Yukari I didn't even start because, for one, I wasn't really interested in most of the lovers personas, and for two, I'm not gonna lie, I'm really not a fan of Yukari, like, as a character in this game. Definitely my least favourite out of the main group. And for two, Aigis, I would have done Aigis if it weren't for the fact that she basically only shows up at the very end of the game, and by that point I was already scrambling to get the social links I'd already started finished. I wasn't about to start a new one, but I did want to do Aigis if I could have done her. Either way, that affected the personas that I was going to bring to the end. I did get Messiah, and got him to the maximum level, and I tried to get into maximum stats, but didn't quite get there, but still some pretty high stats. I tried to get him to inherit some pretty cool skills too. So he's got Megidolon, the highest damage almighty attack in the game, aside from one in particular we'll see later, which is quite rare. And God's Hand, the highest damage bash attack in the game, single target. You got Die For Me, a spell that usually only Alice of the Death Arcana can use. Has a 65% chance to insta-kill every single enemy on the screen. They have Power Charge to increase the damage of their next physical attack. They have Absorb Pierce, which was kind of just an accident that it was there, but still cool to have, especially since they were resistant to all elements except darkness. So the fact that we've even got some physical resistance is quite nice. We've got Oratorio. I actually think this one is modded in, I'm not sure. Oratorio is essentially a Media Rahan to full heal the entire team, combined with a Deikunda to remove all debuffs. Enduring Soul, so that when I die for the first time in a battle, instead of dying, my health gets set to full. And Magic Skill Up, so that we can do more damage with magic-based attacks like Megidolon. However, Messiah isn't my only super highly leveled persona. There's also someone else I maxed out to 99, Lucifer. And honestly, while I planned to make Messiah my main persona, Lucifer ended up kind of being stronger. Agility is the only thing that didn't get maxed out, but everything else is maxed out. He has Meziodine, Brave Blade, Null Ice. I got Null Ice in there because he's weak to ice. That's his only weakness. So now that I've got Null Ice, he has no weakness. Morning Star, the strongest almighty attack in the game for real, which deals enormous amounts of damage and even can knock down enemies. Physical Skill Up for more physical damage. Desecrate for a 70% chance to insta-kill. Mortal Folly, which is a single target physical-based almighty move, even. I believe this is modded in, if I remember correctly. So even though it's almighty damage, which historically is always magic-based in Persona usually, this is considered a physical-based almighty attack. So almighty attacks go through all resistances. So that's really nice. And, of course, Victory Cry. At the end of every battle, fully heal yourself and fully recover all of your SP. So that's probably what I'm going to take into the final fight. The only other persona I might use in the final fight is Chi-Yu, mostly because Chi-Yu has Hasotobe. If you've played Persona a decent amount, you know why that's a good thing. Hasotobe is a slash-based physical move which does small amounts of damage with a high chance to miss and a low crit rate, but it hits all enemies and it activates 8 times in a row. And as a reminder, only one of those hits has to crit for you to get an extra turn. Other than that, he has Invigorate 3, but as I mentioned, unfortunately it's broken in this mod. He has Apt Pupil to increase his crit rate, He has Myriad Arrows, the highest damage multi-target PS-based physical attack in the game. He has Absorb Strike, which means that he's now immune to all kinds of physical, because he's also resistant to pierce and resistant to slash. He's got Arms Master, so that all of the physical attacks in the game only take half as much health as they would otherwise to use. And of course he has Black Viper, inherited from Satan, which gives him an extremely high amount of single target almighty damage. Only issue is he's weak to lightning, but that's why I'm wearing shoes which increase my evasion towards lightning. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go challenge Nyx now. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll probably be making more content on this mod in the near future. And if you're one of the scoundrels watching this video who has not yet seen a full playthrough of Persona 3 within only a few days of me saying I might do a video on Persona, and you're already spoiling yourself with this video, then Jesus Christ, there is no hope for you. I cannot believe you have not already seen a full playthrough of Persona 3, 4, and 5.